Ladies and gentlemen, life is full of twists and turns, filled with moments where we feel like we've reached the end of the road, but the truth is God is never finished with you. The very place where you feel stuck, the very situation that seems impossible, is the exact place where God is preparing to do the unexpected. He specializes in shifting what looks unmovable, opening doors that seem shut forever, and transforming situations that appear beyond repair. There are times when we pray and expect God to move in a certain way. We have a blueprint in our minds of how He should act, when He should show up, and what the outcome should look like. But God is not limited by human expectations. He is the God of the unexpected. He takes ordinary people in ordinary places and does extraordinary things. When you feel like your story is over, He is just beginning a new chapter. Look at Joseph. He had a dream of greatness, but his reality seemed to contradict that vision. Betrayed by his brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused and locked in prison, his journey looked like a disaster. But in a single moment, God shifted his life. One divine moment took him from the prison to the palace, from chains to a throne. What looked like an endless season of suffering was, in fact, God preparing him for something greater. When you're in a difficult season, when things seem to be crumbling, remember this. Your circumstances do not dictate your destiny. God does. What may appear to be a delay is actually divine preparation. The waiting, the struggles, the setbacks are not signs that God has forgotten you. They are the foundation for the miracle He is about to perform in your life. The problem many of us face is that we want God to operate within the limits of our understanding. But God does not think like us, nor does He operate on our schedule. He is always working behind the scenes, orchestrating events, shifting people, and preparing opportunities that you can't even see. What you call a setback, God calls a setup. What you think is a rejection, God sees as redirection. What you assume is the end, God calls the beginning. Never forget that God's ways are higher than ours. The unexpected nature of His power means that He can do in one moment what you couldn't accomplish in years. He can take you from overlooked to overbooked. He can turn your pain into purpose, your trial into triumph. The very thing that was meant to break you will be the thing that God uses to bless you. That closed door was not the end. It was God making room for something better. That delay was not denial, it was divine alignment. The people who walked away were not a loss. They were making space for the right people to enter your life. Every disappointment, every struggle, every moment of pain is part of the process. God is about to surprise you. The very thing that looked impossible is about to shift. The situation that seemed unmovable is about to break open. Do not lose faith. Do not allow your emotions to dictate your belief. Stand firm, because when God moves, He moves suddenly. When He acts, nothing can stop Him. The unexpected miracle you have been waiting for is already in motion. All you have to do is trust, believe, and be ready to receive what He has prepared for you. Life often unfolds in ways that challenge our expectations. We make plans, set goals, and create visions of what we believe our future should look like. We pray, we work hard, and we expect results in a particular way at a specific time. But time and time again, life reminds us that things do not always happen as we imagine. Doors we expect to open remain shut, opportunities we count on slip away, and paths we thought were certain suddenly take unexpected turns. In those moments, it is easy to feel discouraged, confused, or even abandoned. But the truth is, God's plan is always bigger than our expectations. Many times, we limit God to what we can see and understand. We think within the boundaries of our experience, our logic, and our past. But God does not operate within human limitations. He is not confined to our expectations, our timing, or our strategies. What He has planned for your life is far greater than anything you could ever conceive. When God has a purpose for you, nothing, no person, no obstacle, no delay can stop His plan from unfolding. Think of Abraham. He was promised that he would be the father of many nations. Yet, for years, he and his wife Sarah remained childless. By human reasoning, the promise seemed impossible. Sarah was beyond childbearing age, and every natural sign suggested that they had missed their window of opportunity. But God is not bound by human timelines. When He speaks a word over your life, it doesn't matter what circumstances look like. When Abraham least expected it, Sarah conceived and Isaac was born. God's promise came to pass, not according to human logic, but according to divine timing. The challenge many people face is that they expect God to move in a way that makes sense to them. They believe that because they have a plan, God must follow it. But God does not follow human blueprints. His vision is higher, His strategies are beyond human wisdom, and His ability to move is limitless. What you may see as a dead end is often the starting point for something greater than you imagined. When God shifts things, He doesn't just give you what you expect, He exceeds it. Joseph had a dream of greatness. He saw himself in a position of authority, leading and making an impact. But the journey toward that destiny was filled with unexpected hardships. Instead of stepping into leadership immediately, he was betrayed by his brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused and imprisoned. If Joseph had measured his life by his expectations, he would have believed that his dreams were over. But God's plan was still in motion. What seemed like setbacks were actually stepping stones. Each challenge positioned him closer to the throne God had prepared for him. When the right moment came, in a single day, Joseph moved from a prisoner to the second in command of an entire nation. What looked like a tragedy was actually a divine strategy. What seemed like rejection was actually redirection. Had Joseph not been sold into slavery, he would have never entered Pharaoh's palace. Had he not been in prison, he would have never met the person who would introduce him to the king. The entire time, God was orchestrating events beyond Joseph's understanding. Many people give up too soon because they measure God's plan by their own timeline. They assume that if something doesn't happen when they expect it, it means God has forgotten them. But delay is not denial. God does not operate on human schedules. The delay you are experiencing may actually be preparation. What looks like a closed door might be God protecting you from something that is not meant for you. What seems like a loss could be making room for something far greater. Consider the story of Lazarus. His sisters Mary and Martha sent word to Jesus, expecting him to come immediately and heal their brother. But Jesus delayed. By the time he arrived, Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. From a human perspective, all hope was gone. The expectation was for Jesus to heal Lazarus before he died. But God's plan was much bigger. Instead of healing him, Jesus resurrected him. The people had expected a miracle, but God delivered something greater, a demonstration of resurrection power. What they saw as a failure was actually a setup for a greater revelation of God's glory. This is how God works. He is always ahead of you, seeing what you cannot see. He is already in your future, preparing things beyond what you have imagined. You may be in a season where things don't make sense, where prayers seem unanswered, and where expectations seem unmet. But just because it has not happened yet does not mean it is not coming. Just because your plan did not unfold the way you thought does not mean God has forgotten you. It means He has something greater in store. The problem many people face is that they put their faith in their own plan instead of trusting God's process. When things do not go as expected, they become frustrated, anxious, or even doubtful. But faith means trusting in God even when you do not understand. It means believing that He is working even when there is no visible evidence. It means knowing that His ways are higher, His thoughts are greater, and His plan is beyond anything you could imagine. Think about the disciples. When Jesus was crucified, their expectation was that He would establish an earthly kingdom and overthrow their oppressors. But when He was nailed to the cross, their hopes were shattered. They could not see the bigger picture. They did not realize that His death was not the end. It was the beginning of something far greater. On the third day, He rose again, conquering sin and death. What looked like defeat was actually the greatest victory in history. God's ways have always been beyond human comprehension. He does not simply meet expectations, He exceeds them. The breakthrough you are waiting for may not come in the way you expect, but it will come in the way that is best for you. You may not understand why things are unfolding the way they are, but trust that God is working everything together for your good. This is why it is so important to release control and surrender to His process. Let go of the frustration of unmet expectations and embrace the reality that God is in control. He sees the full picture while we only see a small part. What He is preparing for you is bigger, greater, and more powerful than what you have planned for yourself. He is not limited by human logic. The unexpected nature of God's power means that He can shift things suddenly. He can turn pain into purpose, tests into testimonies, and struggles into breakthroughs. He knows the right time, the right place, and the right way to bring His plan to pass. Trust Him because His plan is always greater than anything you could ever expect. Waiting is one of the hardest things to do, especially when you believe that you are ready for the next season of your life. You have prayed, worked hard, remained faithful, and done everything you know to do, yet the door remains closed. The opportunity you expected has not come. The dream you were so certain of seems distant. It is in these moments that doubt begins to creep in, whispering that maybe it's not meant to be, that maybe you've been forgotten. But God's delays are never denials. What feels like a pause is actually a setup for something greater than what you anticipated. God does not work according to human timelines. He is never in a hurry, yet He is never late. When He delays, it is not to harm you, but to prepare you. Preparation is necessary before elevation. Just as a seed must go through a process before it becomes a tree, your destiny requires time to develop. If God gives you something before you are ready, what was meant to be a blessing could overwhelm you. Many people are frustrated because they want to move forward before their character has been developed to sustain what they are asking for. But God sees beyond the present moment. He knows what you need, when you need it, and how you need it. Look at David. He was anointed as king while he was still a shepherd boy. The oil was poured on him, but he did not immediately step into the throne. Instead, he went back to tending sheep. That delay was not denial. It was preparation. Before David could rule a nation, he had to learn how to shepherd people. His time in the wilderness, fighting lions and bears, taught him how to handle the battles that would come when he faced Goliath, and later led a kingdom. Had he stepped into the throne immediately, he would not have been equipped to handle the weight of his calling. Many times we ask God for things without realizing the responsibility attached to them. We want the promotion, the influence, the breakthrough, but we do not always see the challenges that come with them. If you are asking for something great, you must be prepared for the weight of greatness. God's delay is often His way of strengthening your foundation, refining your character, and building your faith. Consider Joseph. He had a dream of leadership, but before he could lead, he had to go through a process that seemed completely opposite to his destiny. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and imprisoned. Every step seemed to move him further from his dream. But in reality, every step was taking him closer to his purpose. Had Joseph not been in prison, he would not have met the cupbearer. Had he not met the cupbearer, he would not have been introduced to Pharaoh. And had he not been introduced to Pharaoh, he would not have been positioned to save an entire nation. What looked like delays were actually divine setups. Often we mistake waiting for wasted time, but nothing is wasted in God's plan. The years you feel have been lost, the time that seems unproductive, the seasons that appear to be stagnant, are all part of a greater picture. God uses the waiting season to mold you, shape you, and prepare you. If you are waiting, it means God is working, even when you cannot see movement. Things are shifting behind the scenes. He is aligning opportunities, positioning people, and preparing circumstances so that when the door finally opens, everything will be in place. Look at the story of Moses. He had a calling to deliver the Israelites from Egypt, but before he could step into that role, he spent 40 years in the wilderness tending sheep. From the outside, it may have seemed like his life was on hold, but in reality, God was preparing him. The same wilderness where he tended sheep was the wilderness where he would later lead an entire nation. What seemed like a delay was actually divine training. Sometimes God delays things to protect you. You may think you are ready, but He sees what you do not. A premature blessing can become a burden. A door that opens too soon can lead to failure. There are things you are praying for now that God is keeping from you because He knows the right time will bring the right results. His delays are not to punish you, but to position you. Look at Jesus. Before stepping into His public ministry, He spent 30 years in preparation. He was the Son of God, yet He did not rush into His assignment. He waited for the appointed time. And when His time came, in just 3.5 years, He accomplished what no man in history could ever do. His delay was divine strategy. The challenge is that many people lose faith during the delay. They assume that because it has not happened yet, it never will. But waiting does not mean abandonment. When a woman is pregnant, there is a waiting period before the baby is born. That delay is not a denial. It is a necessary process to ensure that what is coming is fully developed. The same is true in the spiritual realm. Your promise is maturing. Your breakthrough is growing. Your destiny is being prepared. One of the greatest mistakes people make is trying to force something before it's time. Abraham and Sarah made this mistake when they tried to fulfill God's promise on their own by having Ishmael. But Ishmael was not the promised child. Isaac was. When you rush ahead of God, you create unnecessary struggles. But when you wait on His timing, what He gives you will be beyond your expectations. God does not forget His promises. What He has spoken will come to pass, but it will come at the appointed time. The doors that are closed now will open when they are meant to. The opportunities that seem delayed will arrive right on schedule. The relationships, the provision, the breakthrough, everything is aligning according to His divine plan. If you are in a waiting season, do not lose heart. What looks like a delay is actually preparation. What seems like silence is actually strategy. What appears to be a pause is actually positioning. God has not forgotten you. He is not ignoring you. He is working on something far greater than you can imagine. When the time is right, everything will fall into place, and you will see that every delay was necessary for the fulfillment of His perfect plan. Life can change in an instant. One moment, everything seems ordinary, predictable, and routine, and then suddenly, everything shifts. What seemed impossible becomes reality. What fell out of reach is placed in your hands. What looked like a setback turns into the greatest breakthrough of your life. This is how God works. He moves in ways that are beyond human understanding. And when the time is right, one divine moment can change everything. Many people spend years trying to force things to happen, pushing against doors that refuse to open, striving in their own strength to achieve what only God can give. But what takes human effort a lifetime to accomplish, God can shift in an instant. He is not bound by time, limitations, or human logic. When He decides that it is your season, nothing can stop it. No opposition, no circumstance, no barrier can stand against the divine timing of God. Think about Joseph. He was given a dream of greatness at a young age, yet his life seemed to take a completely different direction. Instead of rising to leadership, he found himself betrayed by his own family, sold into slavery, falsely accused and thrown into prison. For years, it seemed as though his dream was slipping further away, but in one moment, everything changed. In a single day, Joseph was called out of the prison and into the palace. He woke up as a prisoner and went to bed as the second in command of the most powerful nation on earth. That was not the work of man. It was the divine hand of God. This is the power of divine acceleration. When God moves, He does not need years to bring about His plan. He can redeem time, restore what was lost, and position you exactly where you need to be in an instant. What may have taken others decades to accomplish, He can do for you in a moment. This is why you must never lose faith during difficult seasons. You may feel like nothing is changing, like your prayers are going unanswered. But behind the scenes, God is working. He's aligning the right people. preparing the right circumstances and setting the stage for your breakthrough. When the moment comes, everything will fall into place so quickly that you will wonder how it happened. Look at Esther. She was an orphan girl living in obscurity, unknown and unnoticed. Yet, in a single moment, she was chosen to be queen. She did not strive for it. She did not manipulate circumstances to make it happen. It was God's divine plan. And when the time came for her to step into her true purpose, she was positioned in exactly the right place at exactly the right time to save an entire nation. The problem many people face is that they try to predict how God will move. They think that because nothing seems to be happening, nothing ever will. But just because you do not see movement does not mean God is not working. Some of the greatest breakthroughs happen suddenly when you least expect them. This is why you must stay faithful in every season, even when it feels like nothing is changing. Joseph remained faithful in the prison, and it was his faithfulness that positioned him for promotion. Esther remained humble in the palace, and it was her humility that allowed her to step into her destiny. God is not limited by your current circumstances. You may feel stuck, but He is not stuck. You may feel delayed, but He is never late. When your moment comes, what seemed impossible will become possible. What took others a lifetime to achieve will happen for you in an instant. He does not need permission to bless you. He does not need human approval to elevate you. When He declares that it is your time, doors will open, opportunities will arise, and favor will follow you in ways you never imagined. Look at Peter. He had been fishing all night and caught nothing. He was exhausted, frustrated, and ready to give up. But then Jesus gave him one instruction: cast your net on the other side. In one moment, Peter's situation shifted. The same waters that had been empty suddenly overflowed with fish. What changed? It was the divine intervention of God. One word from Jesus transformed lack into abundance. This is how quickly God can shift your life. The same place where you experience failure can become the place of your greatest breakthrough. The same situation that looked hopeless can suddenly turn around. One phone call, one opportunity, one connection, one divine encounter can take you from where you are to where you are meant to be. This is why you must keep your faith strong, even when things seem stagnant. What looks like delay is often divine preparation. What feels like silence is often strategy. Just because you cannot see the pieces coming together does not mean they are not aligning behind the scenes. Joseph did not see his promotion coming. Esther did not see her rise to royalty coming. Peter did not see his miracle catch coming. But when the moment arrived, it happened suddenly. God does not operate on human schedules. His ways are higher. His thoughts are greater, and His timing is always perfect. He knows exactly when and how to move in your life. What you think will take years, He can accomplish in seconds. What you assume is impossible, He can make possible with one command. This is why you cannot allow temporary struggles to shake your faith. Just because you have been waiting does not mean God has forgotten you. Just because things have not happened yet does not mean they never will. Your season is coming. The moment that shifts everything is already set in motion. God is not limited by your past, your mistakes, or your qualifications. When He decides to bless you, no force in hell can stop it. One moment in His presence can restore years of loss. One divine connection can open doors you never imagined. One word from Him can turn your entire situation around. Do not give up. Do not settle. Do not lose faith. The moment that changes everything is closer than you think. The fear is one of the greatest barriers to walking in the fullness of what God has prepared for your life. It has the power to paralyze, to keep you stuck in places you were never meant to stay. Many people miss out on opportunities, delay their destiny, and settle for less because fear convinces them that stepping forward is too risky. But God has not given you a spirit of fear. He has called you to walk by faith, to trust Him even when you cannot see the full picture, and to step into the unknown with confidence, knowing that He is with you. When God calls you to something greater, it will always require you to leave something familiar. He calls you out of comfort zones, out of predictable patterns, and into new territories where you must rely completely on Him. Fear tries to keep you tied to what is safe, what is known, and what is controllable. But faith requires stepping beyond the visible into the realm of trust. Abraham was called to leave his homeland and go to a place he had never seen. God did not give him all the details up front. He simply said, "Go." If Abraham had let fear dictate his decision, he would have stayed in the land of his ancestors and missed out on becoming the father of nations. Many people struggle with fear because they focus on their limitations instead of God's power. They see their weaknesses, their lack of resources, their past failures, and they assume that because they are not enough, they cannot move forward. But the truth is, God never calls you to do something in your own strength. When He gives you an assignment, He supplies the grace, the wisdom, and the ability to fulfill it. When Moses was called to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, he hesitated. He focused on his inability to speak well, on his shortcomings, on his fears. But God did not call Moses because he was qualified. He qualified Moses because He called him. Fear magnifies obstacles, but faith magnifies God. The 12 spies sent to scout out the promised land all saw the same reality. They saw giants, fortified cities, and great challenges. But only Joshua and Caleb had the faith to believe that God was greater than what stood before them. The others let fear take over, and as a result, an entire generation missed out on their destiny. Fear will always make you believe that the giants in front of you are bigger than the God who called you. But when you walk by faith, you understand that no obstacle is greater than the one who fights for you. Peter had one of the greatest experiences of faith in the Bible. He walked on water. But the moment he took his eyes off Jesus and focused on the wind and the waves, fear overtook him and he began to sink. This is what happens when we allow fear to dominate our minds. As long as Peter kept his focus on Jesus, he did the impossible. But the moment he gave attention to the storm, he lost his confidence. Many people begin their journey in faith but allow fear to creep in when challenges arise. They start well but become discouraged when things do not go as expected. The key is to keep your eyes on God, not on the circumstances. Fear often disguises itself as wisdom. It tells you to wait until the perfect time, to have all the answers before you move, to be cautious to the point of inaction. But there is never a perfect time to obey God. If you wait until everything makes sense, you will never step out. Faith requires moving forward, even when things are unclear, trusting that as you walk, God will guide your steps. When the Israelites stood before the Red Sea with the Egyptian army behind them, they were terrified. But God told Moses to lift his staff and move forward. It was not until they stepped in obedience that the waters parted. Fear would have told them to wait, to hesitate, to turn back. But faith propelled them forward into their deliverance. There are things God has placed inside of you, dreams, visions, assignments. But fear has kept you from pursuing them. You have been waiting for confirmation, waiting for signs, waiting for the right conditions. But the moment to step out is now. The enemy uses fear to keep you stagnant because he knows that if you ever truly walk in faith, nothing can stop you. Every great person in the Bible had to overcome fear to fulfill their calling. Gideon felt unqualified. Esther feared for her life. Jeremiah thought he was too young, but each one of them chose to trust God over their fears, and because of that, they stepped into their divine purpose. God is calling you to a higher level, to a new dimension of faith. But you must silence fear. You cannot let the opinions of others, the fear of failure, or the uncertainty of the future keep you from moving forward. The moment you decide to step out, heaven moves on your behalf. Doors that are closed begin to open. Opportunities that seemed impossible become available. Favor begins to follow you. But none of that happens until you take the first step. Fear will always try to remind you of past failures, of times when things did not go as planned. It will replay moments of disappointment, trying to convince you that stepping out again is too risky. But faith says, that what happened in the past does not determine your future. God's mercies are new every morning, and His plans for you have not changed. The fact that you are still here means He is not finished with you. Faith is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to move forward despite it. Courage is not about never feeling afraid, it is about not allowing fear to stop you. Every time you step out in faith, fear loses its power over you. Every time you trust God more than your emotions, you strengthen your spiritual muscles. The more you walk by faith, the less control fear has over your life. The greatest breakthroughs often come on the other side of fear. What you are afraid to do may be the very thing that leads to your next level. The opportunity you are hesitating to take, the decision you are afraid to make, the step you are uncertain about, those are often the places where God is calling you to trust Him. When you overcome fear, you open the door for transformation. This is not the time to shrink back. This is the time to move forward boldly. Do not let fear rob you of your destiny. Do not let uncertainty hold you captive. The same God who called you is the same God who will equip you. The same God who began the work in you is the same God who will complete it. Step forward in faith and watch how God moves in ways you never imagined. God's favor is not based on human effort, qualifications, or background. It is His divine hand moving in ways you cannot explain. When God's favor is on your life, things that seem impossible suddenly become possible. Doors that were once closed begin to open. Opportunities you never expected start to appear. Favor accelerates your destiny, lifting you beyond what your natural ability can accomplish. It is not something you earn. It is something God freely gives to those who trust Him, walk in obedience, and remain faithful, even when things do not make sense. One moment of divine favor can change everything. It can take you from the back to the front, from being overlooked to being chosen, from struggling to thriving. Throughout the Bible, we see examples of how God's favor positioned people for greatness in ways they could never have orchestrated themselves. Joseph was a foreigner and a prisoner in Egypt. Yet, when the time was right, God's favor took him from the prison to the palace in a single day. He did not campaign for the position. He did not have political connections. He did not try to manipulate his way to the top. God's favor opened the door for him. When favor is on your life, people will see something different in you. They may not even be able to explain it, but they will be drawn to help you, to support you, and to give you access to things others had to fight for. Esther was a young Jewish woman living in exile, yet God's favor caused the king to choose her above all others to be queen. She had no royal background, no special qualifications, yet when the king saw her, he was drawn to her in a way that only God could have arranged. Favor does not require human validation. It comes from God alone. The challenge many people face is that they try to achieve things in their own strength instead of trusting in the favor of God. They work tirelessly, striving and struggling, yet they still feel stuck. But when you understand the power of divine favor, you shift from striving to trusting. That does not mean you do nothing. Faith requires action. But it does mean that you recognize that your ultimate success is not determined by your effort alone, but by the hand of God guiding you. Favor is what causes you to be at the right place at the right time. Favor is what positions you for opportunities you did not even know existed. God's favor is often revealed in unexpected ways. Sometimes He will place you in situations that seem insignificant, only to use them as a setup for something greater. David was tending sheep, doing a job that seemed unimportant, but it was in that place that God was preparing him for kingship. The same skills he used to fight off lions and bears in the wilderness were the same skills he used to defeat Goliath. And when the moment came for his elevation, he did not have to force it. God's favor brought him into his destiny at the appointed time. Many people question whether they have God's favor because they are facing challenges. They assume that if they were truly favored, everything would be easy. But favor does not mean a life without obstacles. It means that, despite the obstacles, God will make a way. Joseph was favored, yet he was betrayed, enslaved, and imprisoned before he reached the palace. Esther was favored, yet she had to risk her life to fulfill her purpose. David was favored, yet he spent years running for his life before he became king. Favor does not exempt you from challenges, but it guarantees that those challenges will not stop you. God's favor is not limited by circumstances. You may feel unqualified, overlooked, or stuck, but when God's hand is on your life, nothing can keep you from what he has planned for you. Moses did not think he was capable of leading a nation. Yet, God's favor enabled him to stand before Pharaoh and demand freedom for the Israelites. Ruth was a widowed foreigner with no prospects. Yet, God's favor positioned her to marry Boaz and become part of the lineage of Jesus. When favor is on your life, what seems impossible becomes reality. The key to walking in favor is obedience. Favor follows faithfulness. Joseph remained faithful in the prison, and his faithfulness positioned him for promotion. Esther remained obedient to God's plan, and her obedience saved an entire nation. David remained faithful in the fields, and his faithfulness led him to the throne. Many people want favor without obedience, but favor comes when you align yourself with God's will. You do not have to chase opportunities. When you walk in obedience, favor will find you. God's favor also brings restoration. There are things you may have lost: time, opportunities, relationships, but favor can restore what seemed impossible to regain. Job lost everything, yet because of God's favor, he received double what he had before. When the Israelites left Egypt, they were slaves, but God caused them to leave with wealth and blessings from their former oppressors. What was meant to harm them turned into a testimony of favor. Favor also accelerates destiny. What should take years can happen in moments when God's hand is on your life. Nehemiah was just a cupbearer, yet when God's favor was on him, he was given the authority, resources, and protection to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem in just 52 days. When God's favor is on you, time bends in your favor. What others struggle to accomplish over decades, God can do for you in a short time. The greatest favor of all is the favor of salvation and purpose. The fact that God has chosen you, called you, and set you apart is the greatest evidence of his hand on your life. You were not meant to live an ordinary life. You were meant to walk in divine favor, accomplishing things that are beyond your natural ability. Your life is not random. It is divinely orchestrated. God's favor is not something you have to beg for. It is something he desires to give you. But it requires trust, obedience, and faithfulness. If you are walking through a season where things seem uncertain, do not lose heart. The same God who favored Joseph, Esther, David, and Ruth is the same God who is working in your life. His favor is working behind the scenes, preparing the right people, the right opportunities, and the right timing. When God's favor is on you, nothing can stop what he has planned. No enemy, no opposition, no challenge can stand in the way of what he has ordained. You do not have to fear, strive, or manipulate circumstances. Your only responsibility is to remain faithful, trust in his timing, and walk in obedience. The favor of God is the force that will take you beyond what you could ever imagine. Keep trusting, keep believing, and watch how his favor transforms every area of your life. No matter where you are right now, no matter what challenges you face, and no matter how impossible your situation seems, God is moving behind the scenes in ways you cannot see. His plan for your life is greater than your fears, stronger than your obstacles, and beyond your own understanding. He specializes in doing the unexpected, turning setbacks into setups, transforming pain into purpose, and bringing breakthroughs out of impossibilities.